Hello, everyone. My name is Eleftheria, and I'm the developer advocate and community manager here at the Volvox community. Today, we are going to do something a little bit different than what we do on our usual type of videos. Before, we had some interviewers and we were talking about their projects, but today we are going to talk about AI and all those questions and things that you may have around AI. This conversation is going to be friendly for all the beginners out there, and we want to be helpful. And if you guys also have any questions, feel free to comment below, and we will make our best to answer them as well. Or maybe we could do a part 2 of answering your questions. Today, I have the pleasure to have with me Brad. Brad, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background?
Sure. Hi, I'm Brad. I have been developing software since I was about 11 or 12. I remember I got my first laptop and just started playing around with code. And I've had a passion for it forever. And I have been working in the industry probably about 7 or 8 years. And only recently, obviously, with the advent of AI, have then had to learn how to incorporate AI into my workflow. So I'm really coming from a perspective of someone who knows how to develop software and is now learning to do that, or learning all of the ways that we can do more with AI now.
Would you consider yourself, before all the AI stuff, more like a backend guy, front end, a full stack, a mobile developer?
I would say all of the above, but backend is my heart. I love just using C# to build APIs, just getting very nitty gritty. I hate building user interfaces, but unfortunately, user interface is the only thing clients are interested in. So you have to have the full set of skills, unfortunately.
And you have now your own company, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I started that around in COVID, so 2020, 2021, similar time that Volvox technically started, and similar to Volvox as well. It's funny, I talked to Bill and our stories are actually very, very similar. Sounds like I'm copying him. So yeah, we started around the same time as Volvox, and also very, very small. I used to work for a company called Video Easy. So I think in the US, you have Blockbuster. I'm not sure if you had an equivalent in Europe, but basically DVD rentals. And they pivoted into automatic vending machines for DVD rentals.
Yes.
So I used to work on the software for those. And when they went out of business just after COVID, rather than looking for a new job, I just decided to start my own firm, get a couple of clients, which I had a few people asking already. And yeah, the rest is history. I've just been working for myself with a few clients ever since. Right about now, we're looking to hire a few more people, expand a little bit.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
And indeed,
that's
your
around now.
story looks a bit like Bill's. And for the people who might not know that, Bill is the founder of Volvox, and Volvox is both a company and a community. So, yeah, Brad, thank you for sharing that. And maybe we can start with our questions, right?
Absolutely. I actually haven't read any of these questions, so those will all be new to me.
The first question is, how does programming change for entry-level or junior developers due to AI? We've heard that a lot of positions got lost, especially for entry-level programmers due to AI. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't envy people who are trying to make their way as an entry-level developer right now. It's not something I have direct experience with, but I can speak to what I've heard about my junior at the moment, who is working for us part-time, and he's told me about his struggles getting work elsewhere as well. And it's twofold. The problem is in two parts. The first problem is it's very difficult to get a job because there are fewer positions for junior developers because AI is replacing some of the work that junior developers can do. Not all of it, but some of it. And the second part is that junior developers, not everyone, but some people tend to use AI to do their work for them because they think, this is really great, I can be more productive, which is all true. But the problem is what they don't realize is that they're stunting their own growth. So particularly my junior who's very hardworking and is passionate about what we do, even he has told me that in his day job, where he's also a junior developer, he has just fallen into the habit of using AI all the time. And I've really encouraged him to get out of that habit and start trying to think more and develop his skill sets. And it really took me pushing him to do that in order for him to realize that, hey, this is stunting my growth quite a lot and I'm not really progressing anywhere in the last 2 years. So I think those are the two two main problems that junior developers face.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because exactly this is what I was also thinking. AI can be very helpful, it can help us be more productive. But on the other hand, I feel that sometimes we forget to think, we forget to have critical thinking. Sometimes we simply don't know or don't care about how to do stuff because we say, okay, AI will do this for me. But eventually, and in the end, I'm not sure if this is the right thinking. And I'm glad that I also started my career as a front-end developer. So I'm glad that back then I didn't have AI because it made me think. And I know that the stuff that I know, I really do know them and I can always do those things. But anyway, this is another conversation. Okay, and I have another question. Some people are thinking that AI is a bubble and eventually it will stop being so huge. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's fair. I can't argue with that. Obviously, I'm not an economics expert. I'm not even an AI expert. So I can't answer that definitively, but I can see the points for it. Right? I think that there's a lot of investor money going into AI right now, and it's unclear whether these companies are profitable off of the pricing that they're offering right now. You know, for example, the max plans or even the pro plans, or the consumer plans that Anthropic used to offer, before they reduced their limits, people were racking up like 50 grand a month worth of API API equivalent. If they had used the API for that same, it would have cost 50 grand. It's hard to believe that Anthropic were profitable off $200 a month for that. They've obviously reduced their limits now. So are they profitable now off the consumer plans? I don't know. So one thought that I have is if they aren't, then at some point they're going to have to find a way to be profitable. And I think that the path to do that will be to find the most valuable niche for AI. It's not going to be vibe coders because they burn tokens like no other. And, just iterate and iterate and iterate. It's not going to be vibe coders. It may be professional software developers who know what they're doing and use AI to increase their productivity. But yeah, I don't know. Then they're going to have to find a niche if they're not already profitable. So I don't know yes or no whether it's a bubble. This may
I
be.
get what you mean. And before we get to the more technical questions, I also wanted to ask, I see every week, not to say every day, I see every week a new AI coding tool coming up. And is it easy to keep up with all these new AI coding tools? Or should we stick to the ones that we are already using or the ones that are very well marketed? For example, a lot of people are using Cloud Code, maybe they're using Codex or Cursor, which are the things that we already know. But it's not only that. We see a lot of new AI coding tools coming up every day.
That's an interesting question, especially now that you've told me that you used to be a developer. So I would frame that question. I think that's a very similar question to people asking, hey, there's this new programming language. Should I spend time learning this new programming language, or should I do what I know and specialize in what I know? I think it's a very similar question, just at a different time, right? So my general advice is, unless you have a reason to switch, stick to what you know and get really good at it. And I don't think that is different for AI tools. The proof will be in the pudding. If the tool is phenomenal, it will rise to the top and it will become very obvious that you should switch to it, and you'll know exactly why you should switch to it. That said, I think there's still we still need the kind of people who go and test all this new stuff. Otherwise, no one will figure out what the good ones are. But for me, I'm happy to use what I know. And if something that's so good it can't be ignored comes along, then I'll use that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. And I was also thinking the same, that a few years ago, it was the same with JavaScript frameworks.
Yeah.
We had a lot of them, and it was a similar question back then. Which JavaScript framework should I learn? And obviously, we had the big ones like Angular, React, Vue.js, but we had more, not only these three. So I feel like we are now in a similar era with AI. We have the top 3 or 4, and then there are a bunch of them. Okay, cool. So now let's get into a little bit of more technical stuff. And this time, my first question is, what AI tools are you using?
Claude Code, pretty much exclusively. I started with Cursor. Cursor was what sort of bridged the gap for me because it allowed me to use what I was familiar with and do it in an IDE with just a sidebar. So I should preface that I'm very conservative when it comes to AI, and the reason for that is that I can't afford to take big risk and produce poor quality work or take 3 weeks to set up a new workflow and not get anything done during that time. So I'm generally quite conservative with what I try. So I'm not saying that my way is the best way for everyone. But yeah, so I started on Cursor and then I moved to Claude Code when I saw how much better that was. And I've been on Claude Code ever since. I haven't tried Codex. I haven't tried OpenCode. Claude Code works for me and it works very well. So I'm happy I don't need to get a micro improvement somewhere else. I'm happy to use what I know.
Yeah, honestly, the people that I've been chatting with lately, they all gave me the same answer. And I had the same conversation with Bill. We also did a video, it's already on YouTube, and he told me the exact same thing about Claude Code. So it's nice to see that. Okay, let's change gears a little bit. Can you explain in simple terms what is MCP for the people who are might not aware what that thing is? And we see it online a lot. We see it on social media. We see articles about it, but sometimes we still don't understand it.
So MCP is simply a protocol. MCP itself says how should the AI talk to, or actually not even that. It says how should a program that you write or run talk to something else that is running an AI. So if you take, for example, Claude Code takes your input and it sends it to Claude, and then it gets Claude's response, and then it tells you what the response is. If you have an MCP server in there, an MCP server it has a particular protocol so that Claude Code, not Claude, but Claude Code and your MCP server know how to talk to each other. It's like HTTP, FTP, any of these other protocols. MCP is a protocol. These two programs now know how to talk to each other, and Claude Code will ask your MCP, let's say it's a database MCP, it will ask your database MCP, hey, list out all of the available tools that you are going to make available to the model. And then your database MCP will do that. So whatever the tools are, Claude Code will send that to the model. The model will say, okay, I want to use the query tool. Claude Code will then know through the MCP protocol how to tell your database MCP to execute that command. So then it says, okay, use that. Your database MCP does, sends it back to Claude Code sends it to the model, etc. So it's a way, MCP itself enables that communication between Claude Code and your program, whatever that happens to be. And because of that, it means that your program can talk to Claude. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. One question before we continue. What is the difference between Claude and Claude Code?
Claude is the model. So that runs on Anthropic servers, and that is proprietary, and it's basically a black box. No one knows how it works, save for the few people in the inner circle. And basically you send an API request to Anthropic, they will run it through their model, and they'll send you back the answer. No one gets to know, no one gets to know anything about Claude itself. Claude Code is what you run in your terminal. It's the program that runs on your PC where you type stuff in, and then it will send that stuff to Anthropic to run by their model. Hopefully that clears that up.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for that. And then I was wondering, what is agentic AI and how does this compare to MCP?
They're two different concepts. Okay. So I believe the definition of agentic AI is something along the lines of an AI that can perform complex tasks by itself, or something very broad like that. But when I think of agentic AI, I'm thinking about a model, say Claude, for example, that is capable of doing tasks in steps, that it will send, let's say the user sends it a request. Can you please edit this file? Or let's say something more complicated. Can you debug this issue? Claude comes back and says, okay, let me read these files, etc. Claude Code sends it back the files. Claude then comes back with the next steps. Okay, I've read the files. Now I want to read these files. Claude Code sends the next set of files. So it's a back and forth between Claude Code running on your computer and Claude on Anthropic servers. And Claude is figuring out all of the things that it needs to figure out in order to do what you asked it to do. So that in the real sense is what I think of when you say agentic AI. Is something that can perform multiple steps, reasoning, to figure out a complex problem.
Yeah, it makes sense.
MCP enables Claude Code to give Claude extra tools that it can use as part of that process. So if you attach an MCP server, maybe as part of that whole agentic process of figuring out the issue, maybe one of the things that Claude wants to do is access your database, and your MCP is going to let it do that.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And what is RAG?
RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, I have never used it. I've never set one up. I've never designed one. Like I said, I'm very conservative in my usage of AI, and Claude Code works fine for my purposes. Often, RAG is set up via an MCP. So it will be a program running your Retrieval Augmented Generation server, and then it will talk to Claude via an MCP. And it is effectively, I don't want to talk out of turn here because like I said, I don't have a whole lot of experience, but my understanding is that it's effectively a memory system, and it allows Claude to, instead of just having a conversation once off and then forgetting by the next time, it allows Claude to store and retrieve certain tidbits of information. So you can think of it, a very naive example would be sort of like your Claude MD in Claude Code. It gets sent with your request. So Claude reads Claude.md automatically, and you can press the hash key and then type something, and that will have Claude write that thing to Claude.md, which means that it will remember it for next time because it gets sent every time. So what it's just written will then get sent next time. That's not really RAG, but that's an example of a memory system, and RAG takes that to the next level. And to be honest, I'm not really sure of the particulars.
Okay, that's
So yeah,
fine.
I don't want to speculate on what
Can we compare RAG to LLM, or these two are again two different concepts?
An LLM is Claude itself. So yeah, they are very different concepts, and an LLM will use a RAG system in order to make its output better.
Okay, yeah, I get that. And I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions, so I keep changing topics. So the other thing is, what is AGI and what are your thoughts on it?
AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. What are my thoughts on it? So my thoughts on it are that it's something that we should not take lightly in our pursuit of it. What it is effectively can do anything and think by itself. So I've debated with some people who do consider LLMs to be AGI, and I think technically, by definition, they're right. It's not really what I would consider AGI connotatively. I think when most people think of AGI, they think of something like Skynet or Ultron, and that's probably where my mind goes as well. But basically, at its core, the definition is that it is more of a general intelligence. It can perform a lot of general tasks, which fits the definition of most LLMs, as opposed to previously where AIs were trained for specific tasks like recognize if this image contains a cat, whereas LLMs can do a wide array of tasks from all the same models. So technically, I think these models are AGI, but when we're talking about what most people think of in terms of AGI, that like supercomputer brain type of thing, which obviously there are people in the world who are trying to create this, and my thought on that is that we shouldn't take it lightly, and we need to be quite careful with what we're actually creating.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and it's a conversation that I also see a lot on social media, and people have very different opinions about that, and that's why I thought to ask this question. So yeah, now we will move on to the questions from our community, and again, for the people that might watching us now and don't know it, Discord, we have a community on Discord, and I asked there if people had any questions about Brad. And one of the questions, we already answered it. It was, what tools are you using? But you mentioned that it's Claude Code, right?
Yeah, my AI tools are pretty much exclusively Claude Code. I do use the web chat as well, just as a replacement for Google, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question was, what about the side effects of AI?
What about the side effects of AI?
Yes, that was the exact question.
That is a very broad question. So I think there are lots of categories of side effects we could talk about. One we've already talked about, which is the stunting of people's growth, and particularly in learning. I think other side effects include compute resources. I mean, how many data centers right now are being taken up by people just, vibe coding and typing some prompt and having it rewrite a whole program. I have nothing against vibe coders in particular, but it is a particularly heavy token use activity. So that's why I keep going back to it. So there's that element. Until we find the real sources of value for LLMs, they're kind of being marketed to everyone as something that can do anything. And so there's just a lot of usage and a lot of energy being used and all that. So maybe that's one side effect. Another one is it might be somewhat controversial. I don't think so, but another side effect is the mental health aspect. I think that people looking for companionship find it in something that sounds or seems human and is in fact designed to mimic humans. That's the entire purpose of an LLM, is to predict what the next text would be, and it's trained on human text. So it's basically to predict what would a human say in this situation. So I think the mental health aspect of that is somewhat concerning, because I've seen a lot of people who fall into, well, I don't quite know the words for it, but I'm sure most people know what I'm saying.
Yes,
So they'll fall into
absolutely.
infatuation with an AI. I've heard people say that
Yes.
they're grieving because Anthropic have sunsetted a particular model.
Yeah.
I think that it could make people very lonely because it's not real human interaction, and it can go away and it can change. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
probably the biggest side effect that I'm concerned about, to be honest.
Yeah, this is also a conversation that we don't see very often. People not talk that much about it, but I think that it's very valuable, and thank you for saying that. And yeah, that was really nice. Okay, and now a question that I do to all of the people that I interview is, do you have any advice or tips for new people coming to tech and want to be coders?
I do. And it's the same tip I gave my junior developer, which is do not rely on AI. So I watched Bill's interview and he said do about 50-50. I'm further on the do not rely on AI scale here. I think that you can use it to learn. You can use it for research. You can use it to explain things that would have taken you hours to otherwise research. But if you are trying to break into the industry and learn how to code, I stopped myself. I'm going to continue. So then what I was about to say is you should not write a single line of your code with an LLM. Now, to an extent, I stand by that statement, but the reason I paused is because to some extent, it's also valuable to learn how to use LLMs as well, right? So these are going to be a part of life. So you do need to learn how to use them and how to code with them. So maybe not 0% of your code written by LLMs, but just be very aware that every piece of code that your LLM writes is an opportunity that you missed to get better. So how much you want to weigh doing it yourself versus LLM is up to you, but be very aware of that fact.
Nice. Thank you for that. Okay, and I think that this interview is coming to an end. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts or anything else that you would like to share with our community.
No, not at this stage. But I look forward to continuing to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Brad, for being here today with us. And thank you everyone for watching this video. Again, as I said in the beginning, if you have any other questions, feel free to comment below, as well as check the description box. We will have Volvox social media links and everything else that we have discussed here. And yeah, thank you very much. See you soon with another video. Bye!